Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, we are still talking of the same lesson. We are still discussing the same lesson, the man who planted trees. Again, let me quickly review the theme of the unit, that is hope, courage and determination. I have been repeating this theme throughout the whole unit in almost every lecture that we have recorded so far. Today is our 6th lecture, and inshallah today we will finish off this lesson, the man who planted trees. The text of the lesson, it will end today hopefully. To start our current lecture, let me quickly give you a review that whatever we have discussed so far. This is a story about a shepherd who is living in a desolate land, a barren land, in isolation. He is living alone, and he was discovered basically by the writer of the story, Jean. He was visiting this place for the first time, and he said that this place is not very much known to the common visitors or the people who used to visit different areas. They were not quite familiar with this area. He visited that place and he found it quite boring because there was no greenery. Everything was barren, the land was dry, the wind was harsh, and he was searching for water, and suddenly he met Elzid Bofia. This is the name of the shepherd. He offered him water, and then later on he offered him shelter. He spent the night with him, and then the next day he realized that this man is living alone with his sheep and a dog in this desolation. He is living alone, and he is planting trees on daily basis. He is planting trees in this land without knowing even who is the owner of this land. He is not the owner, of course, but the interesting and the new or unique thing about this person, the shepherd, that he doesn't even know that whose land is that even. He don't even know that. So he's working on it, he's planting trees on the land, he has no information about. The only information or the only thing that he is interested in is that this land is in dire need of trees. So initially he was planting oak trees, later on he started other different species of trees. The writer is telling us that when I met him, it was 1914, and when I came back, the World War I started, and he was busy in World War I for the next 5 years. And in 1919, when World War ended, First World War ended, he wanted to take fresh air. He wanted to go out, for a picnic, and he visited the same place again. And this time, everything was quite different. In his second visit, things were extremely different from previous visit. There was greenery, there was water, there were small streams, running through that area. This was extremely new and astonishing for the writer. And he was, he was of the view that, maybe the shepherd is dead, but he was not. He was still alive, and this time he was planting birches, a very different and unique kind of trees that is mostly grown on the beach areas. He was trying to grow them in those hilly areas. So if you remember, we left on page 149 and we have discussed the first 2 paragraphs. I am going to discuss the 3rd paragraph of 149. So please open your books on page 149. To have anything like a precise idea of this exceptional character, one must not forget that he worked in total solitude. So total that towards the end of his life, he lost the habit of speech. Or perhaps it was that he saw no need for it. He is commenting on human behavior initially. And he said that this type of thing, this type of spectacular job that has been done by this shepherd, it is only possible when you work alone, with complete focus, nothing else. You are assigned with a job and you want to execute that job. This type of extraordinary work can only be done when you have this amount of determination in you, hope and courage. And he said that he was so alone that at the end of his life, towards the end of his life, he even lost the habit of speech. He did not even talk that much. Initially, even when the writer met him, the shepherd, he was not that much interested in syllogism or maybe in just normal speech. Later on, at the end of his life, he was more silent than previous times, right? And in the last line he commented, or perhaps it was that he saw no need for it. We used to say, action speaks louder than words. That was the perfect, L.Z. Bouffier was the perfect embodiment of this quotation, of this line. Maybe he was of the view that let's not talk, let's act. Let's do something, let's practically do something and let the world see it for themselves. Let the people see it from themselves. I should not be bragging or shouting about my achievements. Let my achievements make the noise. I'm reading the next paragraph. I saw L.Z. Bouffier for the last time in June of 1945. He was then 87. The writer says, initially, if you remember, he met L.Z. Bouffier in 1910, right? And he said, I visit this place like 2 to 3 times, and for the last time I saw him in the June of 1945. And then he was 87 years old. I had started back along the route through the wasteland. The writer is now on his last visit. Last visit when L.Z. Bouffier is alive, in that manner, in that sense, it is the last visit. So he said, previously when I used to go through those wastelands, this is basically a wasteland. Wasteland means when you have, see, this is a dry land, no water, no greenery, look at the hills and everything, there is mist, there is dust. So there is no greenery in that. This is what we call a wasteland. So he said, previously when I used to visit this place, it was exactly like this, you know, a wasteland. By now, in spite of the disorder in which the war had left the country, there was a bus running between the Durance Valley and the mountain. He said, although we faced one huge war, the First World War, despite all these things, a bus service has been started between these mountains and the Valley of Durance. I attributed the fact that I no longer recognize the scenes of my earlier journeys to this relatively speedy transportation. And when he was sitting in that bus and he was going through that area and he looked around from the bus on different angles, on different areas, he said that I could not recognize these places. The whole area was transformed. It was transformed into a new area, or we can say a new form. Everything was green, there was water, and we will see now at the end of the story. It seemed to me too that the route took me through new territory. And when I was traveling, the writer says, when I was traveling in that bus, I thought as if the bus is traveling in a new territory. This is the place where I have never been. But that was not true, right? It took the name of a village to convince me that I was actually in that region that had been all ruins and desolation. And he said the only thing that was constant about that area and that was familiar to me was the name of that place. Right? For example, you visited Ghazali today, the college, you have seen it, you have seen the different areas, etc. You have explored the whole college. And you visit Ghazali after 2 years. And it has been completely transformed. Everything has been changed. Its structure, the structure in the classroom, the decoration and everything. And the whole building has been renovated. And if you visit it after 2 years, and you feel like, oh, this is not the college that I visited 2 years earlier. This is completely new. This is different. This is not the same college that I visited 2 years earlier. And only the name, Ghazali Institute of Medical Sciences, Peshawar, is the same. So you will say that it is the name which is making me familiar with this place. Otherwise, this is completely new. The same thing happened to the writer. I am reading the last paragraph on page 149. The bus put me down at Wergens. This is the name of the place in that area. So he said I was dropped by the bus at that place, at Wergens. In 1913, this hamlet of 10 or 12 houses had 3 inhabitants. In 1913, on his second visit, remember, In his second visit in 1913, he said this area, there was a group of houses, and only 3 people were living in that area. And even those houses were not in a very good condition. Everything had changed, but now there's a complete change. Even the air, he said everything is changed, and even the air, the atmosphere is changed even. Instead of the harsh dry winds that used to attack me, a gentle breeze was blowing. Remember the previous time when the writer visited this place and he camped near to these houses, he said there was complete desolation, and the land was barren, there was no water, and the wind, it was so harsh. I could not resist it, and he had to move his camp from that area. But now, he said, the air is serene, it is soothing, and it is blowing with a lot of beautiful fragrances, right? Laden with scents, this air that is the breeze that is blowing in this area, it is full of scents. Different beautiful smells are coming out of it. A sound like water came from the mountains, and in the mountains I could hear the splashing sounds of water which is hitting the rocks, right? It was the wind in the forest, and I thought as if it is the water, but it was basically the wind that was blowing in that forest area. Most amazing of all, above all, the beautiful thing was, I heard the actual sound of water falling into a pool. The very unique and new thing for me was when I hear the voice of actual water that was falling from the mountain into the pool, and that splashing sound, it was so soothing and serene. I'm turning the page. I saw that a fountain had been built that is flowed freely, and what touched me most, that someone had planted a linden beside it. There was a fountain now, there was a proper fountain that was flowing from the hill downwards, and there was a linden. A linden is basically, it's a type of tree, and it was really beautiful. It was really astonishing also that in an area like that we have linden trees. This is what we call a linden tree. See its structure, it grows in extremely green areas. These are basically the leaves and flower of this linden tree. A linden that must have been 4 years old, already in full leaf, the incontestable symbol of resurrection. And he said that when I see these trees, these flower, and the flower on this tree, linden tree, it was as if a new life has been born. When we used to say there is a rebirth of something, right? So it was as if this whole area has been reborn. I am reading the next paragraph on page 150 now. Besides, Wogan bore evidence of labor at the sort of undertaking for which hope is required. Hope then had returned. He said that for this whole area, the place called Werden, everything was so barren and harsh and dry, but only hope was there, and hope has returned in this shape. Ruins had been cleared away. All those ruins, those bad sites, they were all cleared away. People came there, they have built their own new houses, so all those ruins, etc., they were removed and cleared. Dilapidated walls torn down and 5 houses restored. And all those broken walls and roofs were removed from that area, and 5 new houses were built, fresh new houses. Now there were 28 inhabitants. Now in Werden, in town Werden, there were 28 people living. Previously it was just 3 people. Now it is 28. 4 of them young married couples, and 4 of them were young married couples, newly married people. The new houses, freshly plastered, were surrounded by gardens where vegetable and flowers grew in orderly profusion. And in the surrounding of these houses, there were different gardens and beautiful flowers and vegetables. Those vegetables and flower, they were giving a beautiful view to this whole area. And what were these flowers and vegetables? Cabbages. This is what a cabbage is. You know the name of it in your own language, but that is what we call in English. That is cabbage. Roses, of course you know what a rose is. Leeks. This is leeks, right? And snapdragons. This is what we call as snapdragons. These are the flowers. You might have noticed them in springs. In spring season, even now you can witness that in different places, maybe Peshawar University or Islamic College Peshawar. Just visit those places and you will find them in their gardens. This is what we call snapdragons. Celery. This is what we call celery. See, this is the picture of celery. You might know the name of this thing in your own language, but I'm showing you these pictures just to make you sure that these are the names for these different flowers and vegetables in English. And anemones. This is what in Pashto we call warbashi, right? So that is that thing. It was now a village where one would like to live, and this whole area, it was so beautiful, it was so full of life that everybody would like to live now in this area. I'm reading the next paragraph on page 150. From that point on, I went on foot. After that point, that place where the bus dropped him, he wanted to go on foot. The war just finished had not yet allowed the full blooming of life, and of course, the war just ended. During war, people are not, moving from one place to another. So due to even those side effects and, due to the effects of war, people were still not moving that freely. On the lower slopes of the mountain, I saw little fields of barley and of rape. And in the lower sides, this is what barley is, right? So in the rear side, in the side fields, I noticed these plants also. Deep in the narrow valleys, the meadows were turning green. And all those meadows, remember I showed you the picture of a meadow yesterday in yesterday's lecture? So these old meadows, they were becoming green with the passage of time because water was flowing in that area and all these plants and vegetables, they were growing in. I am reading the next paragraph on the same page. It has taken only the 8 years since then for the whole countryside to glow with health and prosperity. This whole transformation in this verdant town, it took almost 8 years. On the sites of ruins I had seen in 1913 now stand neat farms, cleanly plastered, testifying to a happy and comfortable life. Everything was in order. The houses, the vegetables, even the flowers and everything was in a proper order, and it seems as if life has returned to this place. The old streams fed by the rains and snows that the forest conserves are flowing again. All those areas, all those fountains and different streams, they were all flowing again now. Previously, they were only flowing through a rainy season or when snow used to fall. After that, they were dry, but now they were constantly flowing on. Their waters have been channeled, and those constant water that was coming out of these streams, they were channelized into different fields, towards different fields, so that they can water their plants. On each farm, in groves of maples, fountain pools overflow on the carpet of fresh mint. Groove means a group, and maple is basically this tree. These are the trees of maple, okay? And see, this is the group of, it's a group of maple trees. So we call groove of maple. Little by little, the villages have been rebuilt. Slowly and gradually, all those villages which were deserted into ruins, they were all being rebuilt. People from the plains where land is costly have settled here. And those people who were sitting in the plain areas, who were living in those plain areas, they came to this area. Because in plain areas, in city side, mostly the land is quite costly. And as you go away from the cities in rural areas, the land is getting cheaper. So this land was cheaper comparatively to the city's land. That is why people were coming to this area and they were living here. Bringing youth. Along with them, of course, they were bringing youth. Motion. A place which was previously deserted and nobody was living there, there was no sign of life. Now everything was returning to this area. The spirit of adventure, and of course, people were coming here for adventure. Along the road, you meet hearty men and women, boys and girls who understand laughter and have recovered a taste of picnics. And when you were going through this area, through a road or a street, there were hearty men, hearty people who used to have smiles on their faces, friendly people. They will greet you, they will offer you, their hospitality, which was really nice. Counting the farmer population, recognizable now that they live in comfort, more than 10,000 people owe their happiness to Elzevir Boffier. And all these people, the farmer, the people that are here just to live, and even those who are just here for a visit, it is like almost 10,000 people, and all of them owe their thanks and their prosperity to one man. Who is that man? Elzevir Boffier, the shepherd. I am reading the last paragraph of this lesson on page 150. When I reflect that one man, armed only with his own physical and moral resources, the writer says, when I used to sit back and think, when I reflect on this achievement of this man who was only armed with one thing, which was that thing? His moral and physical resources. First of all, what is a physical resource? A physical resource is that he was having his own body, physical resource, an iron stick that he used to dig a hole with, and the acorn seeds, the lambs and sheep, etc. That was his whole physical resources. But just keep one thing in mind. This extraordinary job that was done by the shepherd, it was not just because of his physical strength. It was all because of his moral strength. So that was the moral resource. And what are these moral resources? Hope, courage and determination. These are basically the moral resources that kept the shepherd keep on going on. That was something that kept him going on throughout his whole journey. Was able to cause this land of Canaan to spring from the wasteland. I am convinced that in spite of everything, humanity is admirable. He said that after I sit back in my armchair or in my bed and I think about this person, and I see that the change that he brought, one man has caused such a huge change. So it means that humanity is admirable, right? Humanity is above all. But when I compute the unfailing greatness of spirit and the tenacity of benevolence that it must have taken to achieve this result, I am taken with an immense respect for that old and unlearned peasant who was able to complete a work worthy of God. He said that despite all these things, when I used to sit back and think about this person, that he has done something God used to do. Yani God put all his, you can say that he basically pushed him to do that. So this was the job of a God which was done through a man. And who did it? A shepherd did it. With what? With hope, courage and determination. He was steadfast. He did not compromise on his dream. He went on and he achieved his goal. And the last line of the lesson, Elzevir Boffier died peacefully in 1947 at the hospice in Benin. It's a place, and he died in June 1947. Well, that is all about the lesson. We will stop here. It has been finished. I hope you understood the lesson. Inshallah, I will discuss its exercise in the next video. Please stay tuned. I will see you inshallah soon again. Thank you.